On behalf of the leadership class, we'd like to welcome you to our 9th annual Jury Leadership Summit. And we're very excited to have the following presenters join us this evening. Mike Farquhar with Fellow Products, Tiffany Haynes with Jack Henry and Associates, and David Henson with Jury University. But more on them in just a few minutes. Now, as mentioned, this is our 9th annual Leadership Summit. This is the first time we've hosted it virtually. And trust me, we really wanted to host it in person again this year, but due to the circumstances, it just wasn't possible in 2020. However, we do look forward to seeing you again in person next year. Now, we'd like to provide our presenters and those watching at home with a little background to this event. Now, the first year of the Leadership Summit, we hosted it here in this building, and we had right around 30 attendees, including the students. But this event continues to grow each year, and this year is definitely no different. Now, even though you can't see everyone, we wanted to share with you a little about our audience this evening. Now, I'm currently in a classroom at Drury University with 14 extremely bright students ranging from future leaders to existing leaders within our community. Now, these students come to us from various cities in Southwest Missouri, various states, including California and Texas. And we even have some who have made the journey from different countries, including Mexico and Thailand. If that wasn't enough, joining us tonight virtually are past Leadership Summit presenters, technology executives, healthcare leaders, lawyers, bankers, veterans, teachers, classmates, coworkers, friends, and family. So you talk about a diverse group of students and community leaders from all walks of life. We have them with us tonight. So with that being said, a sincere thank you to everyone joining us tonight and for your continued support with our Leadership Summit. Now, we would like to give a special thank you to our very own Rhonda Shilley, Yessie Perez, Sarah Ninninger, and Sarah Jones for all of their help with coordinating the Leadership Summit. We couldn't do it without the support and encouragement of this fantastic team of jury leaders. Okay, let's kick off our 2020 Leadership Summit. And we will have our 3 leaders provide us with their perspectives on leadership, roughly 10 minutes per speaker. Then after all the speakers have presented, we'll open it up for Q&A session from you, the audience. So be thinking about what questions you might like to ask our leadership panel. And feel free to submit those questions on our landing page right below the video and agenda. So right where you clicked on the video from YouTube, right below that, feel free to submit your questions there. Also, be sure to enter your name to register for some door prizes, Walmart, Starbucks, a few local restaurants, and we even have some cool jury merchandise as well. Now, a couple of requests from me. I am interested in knowing who is watching us from the furthest location. So whether it's Fairgrove, Missouri, or Fairbanks, Alaska, I'd love to know where you guys are watching us from. Also, we'd love to know those of you who attended the most leadership summits. So if you attended 2 or 5, 9, we'd love to know that as well. So when you enter your question or enter as registration, I would love that information to be provided. All right, so without further ado, to introduce our first presenter, Mr. Benjamin Seaton.
Good evening. Our first speaker resides in Springfield, Missouri, has been a husband to Wendy for the last 23 years, and is a father of 5. He holds a BA in accounting from Central College in Pella, Iowa. After college, he started working for Pella Corporation and continued advancing through the organization, ending up in Monett, Missouri as the president of EFCO, a Pella company. He served in this role for 7 years, which is where I met him. In April of 2015, he had the opportunity to purchase a regional sales territory called Pella Products of Arkansas and Missouri. With more than 20 years of experience at Pella, he jumped at the chance to own a business he knew inside and out. During his time at EFCO, we worked together, and I consider him to be an inspirational leader, role model, and someone I'm happy to call a friend. Without further delay, I'm excited to present to you the president and owner of Pella Products of Arkansas, Missouri, Michael Farquhar.
Ben, thanks so much for your kind introduction. I'm honored to be chosen to discuss leadership with all of you tonight. As you heard, in my career, I've had the opportunity to work for larger companies like Pella Corporation and EFCO, as well as now owning my own small business that employs 45 team members. These opportunities have helped me form my own leadership style, as well as recognize things that work, no matter how big or how small the company, and no matter what job a person holds in an organization. If there is one thing I would want everyone to remember from my discussion tonight, is that leadership is not just required from traditional leadership positions like executives and managers and supervisors and the like. Leadership is possible and necessary at every position in an organization. And the organizations that figure this out and figure out a way to engage everyone in this thought process will be much more successful than those that don't. Certainly, leadership does not look exactly the same for everyone in a business, but it is still part of everyone's job. The way we answer the phone, handle products with care as we deliver them, go the extra mile to clean up a customer's home following an installation are all examples of leading from various positions in our business and ensuring that we are the winning team, that customers rate well, tell their friends about, and reward us with future projects. So what really is leadership then? Leadership to me is serving others and taking care of people, our team, their families, our customers, our community members. These acts can be done in every position at every level throughout any organization. We believe in constantly discussing and reinforcing this at Pella Products of Arkansas and Missouri. One way we get the word out consistently is in our business, we discuss the same 2 slides in every quarterly meeting and have for 5 years. The 2 slides are called My Role and Your Role. I always start with my role because it is a reminder to me that I am accountable to my team. I want to be crystal clear with our team what it is I consider my job to be as the owner and president, and invite them to hold me accountable to these things. My role includes creating a culture, one that is safe, people-focused, and customer-focused. Treating everybody with fairness and respect. Serve others. Create financial incentives to win as a team. Pay a living wage and help our team plan ahead financially. Ensure the business is financially stable, both profitable and operating with minimal debt. Give my team the tools they need to succeed and make the necessary investments to win in the future. And finally, support the team any way I can. Remove barriers to success, develop a solid game plan so that we win together. I follow that with the slide of what I expect from them. Embrace the culture, serve others, no drama. Improve the business, give constructive ideas and feedback if something is not working quite right, but always be willing to try new things. Grow the business. We can't sit back and wait for customers to walk through the door. We have to ask for the sale. We have to, from both existing customers and find new ones. All of us are in sales. Be supportive and positive about our direction. Be excited about being on a winning team. And finally, work hard. Don't cheat the company with your time or attention. Reviewing and discussing these reminders quarterly has served our team well to keep us all on the same page and accountable to each other. We have roughly tripled our sales and doubled our number of team members in the last 5 years. However, we all know that 2020 has brought unique and unprecedented challenges. In early March, it became apparent that the country was going to go from booming to a potentially catastrophic bust in the shortest time in history. I knew then that our team would be tested, and depending on what happened in the months ahead, our very survival as a business might be on the line. My approach to this situation was to attempt to communicate what was known, confront what was unknown, and lay out how we would handle this situation together. I tried to be very conscious of the need to be the steady hand, consistent in my message and my mood. I knew that if I didn't remain optimistic, how could I expect anybody else on our team to be? It now seems like years ago, but for our business, the process of preparing for the new 2020 began with a communication to my team on March 12. It started as an email to them addressing the uncertainty of coronavirus, its impact on the economy, the stock market, and potentially our health. I started with the words that are true in any situation, good and bad. This too shall pass. I reminded the team that in every sudden and traumatic situation our country has faced, we rallied together, the economy recovered, and even though things may change, good times ultimately returned. I addressed the specific steps we would take as a business, what we would change immediately while continuing to still follow our business plan and make investments as appropriate. We did not lay off or furlough any of our team members. The example I often rely on when it comes to crisis management came days after 9/11. The U.S. had just suffered a devastating terrorist attack that had killed 3,000 of our American citizens and injured 6,000 more on American soil. The nation was grieving and shocked that this could happen and scared what would happen in the days ahead. 3 days after the attacks, President George W. Bush visited the smoldering ruins of the World Trade Center in New York City, climbed up on top of some of that rubble, put his arm around one of the firefighters who had been working to exhaustion, grabbed a bullhorn, and sent a message to the world. I want you all to know that America today is on bended knee in prayer for the people whose lives were lost, for the workers who work here, for the families who mourn. The nation stands with the good people of New York City and New Jersey and Connecticut as we mourn the loss of thousands of our citizens. Someone yelled from the crowd, "I can't hear you." And the president responded with, "I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you. And the people who knock down these buildings will hear us all soon." Amid chants of USA, USA, a nation's focus at that moment turned from the shock of an unprovoked attack to looking ahead with resolve and unity. In no way would I ever compare a situation I've been in as a leader to that bullhorn moment of our former president. Obviously, the magnitude of the decisions the President of the United States has to make has worldwide implications and can alter history. However, situations seem to arise every 10 years or so that wreak significant havoc on business conditions and must be met with similar resolve by each one of our businesses and teams. In my career, the first Gulf War, 9/11, the Great Recession, and coronavirus have all required focused leadership and resolve by each one of our team members to get through. And in the weeks after that first communication to the team I mentioned, we developed that resolve and made our plans. We micromanaged certain costs, things like canceling subscriptions and other recurring costs, reducing near-term advertising during the stay-at-home orders, eliminated all travel, and for many weeks when I visited our North Little Rock location, I slept on a cot in my office and washed my hair in the bathroom sink. During the exact same time, we bought a new delivery truck and added 2 new sales representatives to our team. We used that slower time to onboard and train them with the full expectation that after the economy's hard stop, that business would return and we would be able to grow our market share. I went back to that first communication and I had ended it like this. I know we don't share all the same God beliefs, and that's okay, but my God is a source of refuge and strength for me personally. And one of my favorite Bible verses is Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. I believe this with all my heart, and that is why we will continue to be bold, yet prudent as we navigate the months ahead of us. We are continuing to recruit new team members, took delivery of a new truck today, and are about to book the biggest job of the last 5 years. We continue to make plans to invest in our business. Plans may change if conditions warrant, but right now everything is full speed ahead. I appreciate you all, and I am confident that we as a team will continue to win. Control the controllables and don't spend time worrying about things outside of your control. As crazy as it sounds, I continue to believe that the changes that will take place in consumers and the economy because of this situation will ultimately be good for our business with more focus on the home. But in the short term, things are likely going to be difficult. The actions we take now are ultimately what protect jobs in the business. We're not going to overreact and damage the business long term, but we're also not going to underreact and hope for the best. We will get through this together as a team and be ready to win when it's over. As I wrap up tonight, and we're now all in the Thanksgiving season, I just want to acknowledge how much my family and our team has to be thankful for. While we've had our share of quarantines and sicknesses, we have not yet had anybody seriously impacted by COVID. Additionally, the environment for home improvements and new construction are now both stronger than they were before the pandemic, and we're blessed to say that we have experienced tremendous growth the back half of this year. As we suspected back in March, people are not able to spend much on vacations or recreation, and they consider their homes their safe haven. This has accelerated all aspects of consumer spending related to the home, including windows and doors, thankfully. We're thankful for our good fortune, even as we're keenly aware of the human and economic toll of the virus on so many others across the nation and around the world. Thanks a lot for allowing me to share my 2020 leadership story with you this evening. I really look forward to learning more from Tiffany's and David's experiences.
Thank you, Mike. So our second presenter, Tiffany Haynes, has been with Jack Henry & Associates since 2002. Much of that time devoted to operations, project management, people operations, and culture. As a general manager of human resources and payroll, her passion is putting associates first. Tiffany has helped JHA evolve while being the keeper of the culture, providing organizational and team guidance, sharing inspiring knowledge, and most importantly, listening and aligning talent strategies with the future needs of JHA. Most recently, this past October, Tiffany was asked to lead the unification efforts of the newly consolidated call centers at Jack Henry. Tiffany holds a Bachelor of Science in Management and Master of Business Administration from Missouri State University. Is a certified senior professional in human resources, project management professional, and a certified Scrum Master. If she could be anywhere other than here, right this minute, she would be in the mountains, any mountains. When she's not working, Tiffany enjoys life with her husband and 4 young boys. She also loves blogging on the side. Tiffany invites you to connect with her via LinkedIn or at thaynes@jackhenry.com. It is my honor to introduce our next speaker, Tiffany Haynes.
Oh, thanks so much. I'm so glad to be here and kind of share with you all. So I'm not going to speak specifically about this last year, but I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about experiences I've had as a leader and things that I think as you become leaders, whether that's leading yourself or leading other people, you're going to experience too. And I have kind of this favorite saying that I love, and it just says, stick your landing. And that phrase has really been a sacred echo to me, just kind of throughout my career. And so when I think of like stick your landing, I think gymnastics, and I was never a gymnast, nor can I do a cartwheel, but I watched gymnastics growing up on the Summer Olympics with my grandma. And if you ever kind of watch gymnastics, there's nothing more amazing than just like a confident, hardcore landing from a powerhouse gymnast. So if you can't get your mind's eye like dialed into that image, go to YouTube, look for, gymnast landings, and it will definitely fire you up. But, I think here's the rub when you think about like these repeat highlight reels of amazing landings. Is they look great in the video, they look great in slow-mo, they look great on replay, right? But we fail to see the sufferings in those highlight reels, right? Highlight reels are fantastic, but they rarely spotlight the pain, right? The work and the falls in between that come with what they get to do, right? So I love this book. I have a copy here. It's called The Hard Things About Hard Things. If you've not read it, you should. It's by Ben Horowitz. And it is straight and raw about kind of all things business and how Ben leads. And he's kind of like the business version of Brene Brown, but with less hair. But there's a quote in the book, and he says, hard things are hard because there are no easy answers or recipes. They're hard because your emotions are at odds with your logic, and they're hard because you don't know the answer, and you cannot ask for help without showing weakness. So that part that Ben mentions about you cannot ask for help without showing weakness, that's so true. It is a norm, particularly in corporate America where I work, and it's absolutely wrong. That's why I like Brene Brown, because she's all about showing up when it's hard and calling a spade a spade. So one of my favorite quotes of hers is, vulnerability is not winning or losing. It's having the courage to show up and be seen when we have no control over the outcome. So you're probably kind of like maybe wondering where I'm going with all this, like you're talking about sticking your landing, Tiffany, and hard things and showing up. I'm going to kind of give you some practical tips at the end, but first I thought I'd just kind of share a personal kind of leadership story from my heart to yours. So at one point earlier in my career, I was frustrated. As a side note, I still get frustrated. I am human. And it's really hard when you're frustrated, right? Like there's kind of this wad of emotion, your logic sucks, you know you're right, and you'll do whatever it takes to prove it. So frustration doesn't look good on me. It doesn't look good on you. So you got to kind of figure out a way to get around that. But anyways, back to the story. I was frustrated and someone pulled me to the side and said, I'm kind of condensing and paraphrasing here. They said to me, like, you may not belong here. Your pace is too fast and you might do better in consulting. And so, these words were spoken in positive intent. Okay. So they weren't meant to discourage me, but it still stung, right? Like that, it still hurts to hear that. And they use that word belong. And I've carried this conversation in my heart for a really long time. And I've noticed that when I'm questioning whether to stick my landing and things get hard, that narrative kind of creeps in again because we're wired to belong. We're wired to be a team. We're wired to be with other people. So, the bad inner voice of mine says, "Oh, Tiffany, you don't belong." And then I'll say, "Yeah, you're probably right." And then the bad inner voice says, there's really not much room for your thinking here. You probably need to move onward. And then I'll say, yeah, you might be right. It's kind of stuffy in here. Like I should move forward, right? So I hope you kind of know what I'm explaining here, or have felt what I felt. And if you haven't, you will. Don't worry. So make mental note of this if you don't have a frame of reference. And I think it's an important point because as leaders, we really don't talk enough about how bad we want to quit sometimes. And we don't talk enough about the hard things. We don't talk enough about the courage to just show up and that's enough. Right. So there's kind of this norm that it's bad, it's terrible, it's not a good thing to admit like you're having a rough season, right? You're having a bad day because you don't want to let other people in on the fact that things are rough. And I think that's an opportunity for us to step back and say, why is that, right? Why is there a social norm around only posting the highlight reels? I know one person told me once, like, well, if you show you're tired, then your employees are going to reflect that, right? You're going to signal to them that you're tired, and that's going to make them nervous and stressed out. And there's some truth in that, right? But I'd also offer this additional thought that, maybe they're tired too, and they're just waiting for someone to let them know it's okay to not be okay, right? It's okay to say, this is hard. It's okay to show up and have zero control of the outcome. And so, kind of going back to my story of feeling frustrated in my career, we really have two choices when it comes to managing frustrations. So this is kind of where my life hack tip comes in, I guess. And if you're like a natural kind of change agent, maverick, pioneer, you're going to have to work overtime in managing frustrations because you're just so rapidly wired, and that's okay. Just know you got to work to manage this. But it's so easy to let the frustration fester into bitterness, which is a horrible idea. So festering frustration is choice number one. And I will say, like, if you're bitter and you're not getting better, you truly should consider an alternative, right? That's not a healthy way to live for you or anyone else. But choice number two is to have the courage and the commitment to turn that frustration into creative tension. So we don't have enough time to get into creative tension today, but it's really essential for working through the struggle of sticking or landing. So if you're courageous, kind of this path of courage and commitment can lead to humility. It can lead to a re-anchoring, and kind of that pressing that you feel, that pressure, can create truly a blessing for other people. So it's good to be pressed. It's good to feel those things, and to let it feel hard, and to feel that pressure, because it's in that pressing that really releases a blessing for yourself and for others. So, it's really when I am feeling overlooked, I'm feeling undervalued, ignored, silenced, tired, all those kind of poopy feelings that are never fun. We got to know that in that moment, like, the best is close by if we will just hang to it, right? And at that moment, when I'm feeling all those things, like, I learn and I relearn every time that value doesn't come from what people say. It is about what I say to myself when everybody else is silent. And that's so important to know as a leader. So as I go back to the start of the phrase I shared with you, stick your landing when it gets hard. And each of you need to decide today, kind of ahead of the pain, ahead of the suffering, ahead of those leadership trials that you will come up against, whether you're going to stick your landing or not. And I hope the answer is yes. So that's kind of what I wanted to share with you. I will leave you with one last quote from Ben Horowitz's book, and I think it's really good. He says, "Great CEOs face the pain. Whenever I meet a successful CEO, I ask them how they did it. Mediocres point to their brilliant strategic moves and their intuitive business sense, or a variety of other self-congratulatory explanations. The great CEOs tend to be remarkably consistent in their answers. They all say, 'I didn't quit.'" Thanks for the time today. I'm looking forward to Q&A later.
Thank you, Tiffany. Our last speaker, David J. Henson, served Drury University as Chief of Staff, Chief Operating Officer, and Chief Information Officer, executing the university's strategic vision and operation. He is responsible for the vision, leadership, planning, and management of all information infrastructure and software systems throughout Drury University, including institutional business support, enrollment management, and classroom technology, and online delivery of education and instructional innovation, as well as having responsibility over all university faculties and communication. David is leading the university's effort to mitigate the spread of COVID-19 on Drury's campus. David has served in senior leadership roles in higher education and K-12 for the past decade. Prior to that, he was the CEO of Summer System Management, an enterprise software company, from 1996 until 2011. David hails from Nashville, Tennessee, where he grew up and met his wife of 34 years, Melissa. Please help me welcome David Henson.
Thank you, Mushi. I really appreciate the invitation, and it's always a pleasure to see other leaders and hear their experiences. And so, Michael and Tiffany, thank you very much for sharing your journey. I was very excited to be invited when Mushi said, would you be willing to do this? I was very happy to accept, because who doesn't like to talk about themselves? And it's something where I'm the sole subject matter expert. So that made me very happy. And then when he said, well, we have a presentation window of 10 minutes, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, that's not a presentation, that's leadership haiku. So how can I encapsulate the past 35 years of my professional experience into a cogent presentation where you can understand a bit of how I approach leadership? From my perspective, I view leadership as lived experience. Everything I've done in preparation as a professional, the knowledge I've obtained, the relationships I've made, it's all leading up to this moment in time. And for me, leadership is figuring out a way that I can take that synthesis of skills and life experiences and apply them to whatever situation I find myself in order to get to a desired outcome. I certainly managed my development team 25 years ago as a software project manager differently than I approached my job as the CEO of a software company and managing not one boss, but 120 bosses, keeping them happy, not only being in the customer service business, but in the constituency service business. And then transitioning a decade ago into higher education, where I had to learn an entire new language in order to navigate coming from a for-profit internet time kind of proposition into shared governance academic time. And they are entirely different things. But the thing that was common in all of that was me and the experiences I brought to the job. So I guess if I were to examine my leadership style, I am very much a collaborator. I tend to try to build consensus. I tend to try to understand the strengths and weaknesses of the teams at my disposal, my colleagues. And I try to make sure that front and center, I'm understanding what is our institutional mission and how might I best contribute to the success of that mission. So for me, I'm very much a proponent of the philosophy of servant leadership. And that's where I focus on the needs of my employees and their professional development as a means to establish trust between myself and my teams, but also to understand that the furtherance of developing them as professionals and developing them as people actually helps move the institutional ball down the field. So it's a very good model, especially in higher education. If you come from the private sector, it's very dictatorial at times. Certainly, when you are responsible for a division or a company, and you don't answer to anyone perhaps other than a board of directors, you can be much more forthright and direct in directing activities. With nonprofits and with schools, higher education, or even K through 12, it's much more of a collaborative effort, and you lead through influence rather than dictate. And simply because I believe something very strongly doesn't necessarily mean I can motivate someone who has lifetime job protections in order to meet the same goals that we're all trying to reach as an institution. So in order for me to be effective in that kind of milieu, I need to make sure that, number one, I'm extremely competent in the skills I have at my disposal, because I need people to trust that I know what I'm doing. I need to be able to understand what motivates them as people and how it relates to their relationship to the company or the school. When you look at a nonprofit, or if you look at a university like Drury University, it's like a tapestry, and everybody that's a part of the institution is a part of that tapestry and woven in different ways. And you never quite know, when you pull on any one thread of that tapestry, what comes apart, because it's so interconnected. These institutions tend to be not simply places of work, but they are connection points in the lives of our employees. It is a missional aspect in their approach to work. They've had their transformative life moments here. Maybe they've met their life partners here. Maybe they met a longtime mentor through their connection with the university. And so how you motivate people and why they come to work, you have to understand that in order to get the maximum amount of effectiveness out of that. And finally, you need to understand what it is that the university is looking to get out of us as employees, as fiduciaries of the university. What is it that we hope to accomplish? And the longer you spend at these universities, the more you understand that although there are guiding missions to what you're trying to do here, life comes at you fast. So this year, 2020, certainly has been very illustrative of how life comes at you very fast. So as Michael was speaking about, in March, we realized how significant COVID was going to be in our landscape. And we quickly motivated ourselves to moving 1,400 day school students and folks in our Drury Go campuses into a full online modality in a matter of weeks. That was not inconsequential, and we were able to do so very successfully. We were very reactive, and then we realized, well, there is life after. As Michael had mentioned, it is transitory. There will be a day after. And so we've quickly moved our COVID mitigation efforts into a proactive mode and began planning. And so part of that servant leadership attitude enabled us to put together a collaborative framework that we could get voices from across the institution to come and help us solve very thorny problems in order to bring students back in the fall and to be able to teach, learn, and live in a safe fashion. We created a group called the Student Health and Public Safety Group. Rhonda and Sarah on this call both serve on that with me. We meet several times a week and have met several times a week over the summer and throughout the fall, talking about issues of student safety. How can we come to work? How can we work safety? How can we set up safe working environments so that we can get the maximum amount of learning so that our students can get that jury experience they've come to know over the years. We have been very blessed that we've been able to create a safe working environment here, but we have not remained untouched through COVID. We lost a loved and trusted colleague who had worked here for 16 years. He passed, unfortunately, due to COVID complications. It is very real to us. We had a team member today who had a second relative pass from COVID. So we remain mindful of the challenges that the disease presents, but we're also mindful of a bright horizon that will exist past this. So you can get hung up on the tactics of how do you apply leadership. You can get hung up on what is the right thing to say at the right time. You can fall back upon a set of known aphorisms, but there are many times like this year where you have to fall back on your experience as a person, your experience as a professional, and draw upon that experience to do the right thing. If you have a good sense of who you are as a person, what your core beliefs and values are, those can direct you even when you don't know the absolute answer. And as Tiffany said, it's about doing the hard things and pushing through. It's about spending those sleepless nights worrying over details that nobody else is worried about. Nobody's asked you to do that. You do it because you've taken them on as a leader. I know that in my life, there have been times when I've been exultant about the happy times being in leadership has brought me. And there have been times when I've been brought to the pits of despair and wanting to share with someone the challenges that I'm facing. And that's part of a normal professional arc. Everybody has successes, everybody has setbacks. The key is being able to reach into your core, knowing who you are as a person, and using those values to direct your steps. It's okay to not know everything. There will be steps in your career path as you are developing upon your path to wherever it is you're going, when you will be elevated to a new position and you will think, I'm not worthy to be here because I don't know everything. Well, you are expected to learn and to grow. And if you're lucky, you will find those companies that will invest in your growth and invest in your leadership potential and will give you the grace to fail. Leaders aren't infallible. Leaders fail. It's how they handle that failure and how they lead through the failure and how they hold themselves accountable to that failure that really shine a light on who they are as people. And ultimately, those teams that follow those leaders will see through the rhetoric. They will see who those leaders are as people by the way they live. It's not simply about showing up and being the boss. It's about everything you do. People watch you constantly in order to see how you will react. Even when you don't think anyone is looking at the way you make a decision or the way you treat others, there is always someone looking, and you are always having some sort of impact on not only how they perceive you, but perhaps how they are taking what they see in you and applying it to them. I have found for me, once I realized that I could have a positive impact simply by living or trying to live a good life and trying to do the right things, life really kind of changed for me. Once I became invested in the success of the people that I work for and their success and in the success of the people that work for me, my attitude changed and my sense of purpose and whatever I'm doing really changed. And so for me, attempting to be a good servant leader, putting the needs of others first, understanding what they need from me in order to be successful, and how to fit that within the framework of what it is we're trying to do missionally, whether I'm working at a university, a K through 12 yeshiva in Brooklyn, New York, or as the CEO of my company. You don't get where you are as a leader on your own. You do it on the successful collaborations of your customers, your constituencies, your employees, your mentors. You don't get there alone. And if there's something I would take away from it, I would say, try to learn as much as you can about whatever your area of concentration is. If you are an artist, be the best artist you can be. If you're a writer, write. If you're a musician, practice. You become proficient by doing. That proficiency will build trust in others that look to you as the expert. And by establishing your bona fides through that demonstration, you can then concentrate on the mechanics of whatever management philosophy you aspire to. And trust me, over the course of a few decades, you will work your way through more than one of these kinds of transitions. But at its heart, you will always be you. The experiences that you gain will always be yours. And learning to trust others will do so much for you in terms of furthering your goals and furthering the goals of the companies that you lead. So I don't really have a pithy takeaway sentence. I can just say that the most important words in my job description aren't EVP, it's not chief of staff, it's not COO, it's not CIO, it's duties as assigned. And that constitutes 95% of my day. Some days I can't even explain what is really my prime directive for the day. You do what you need to do in order to be successful. And that framework of self-centeredness in terms of knowing who you are, your sense of value as a person, the things that you believe in, people will see them and they will buy into them. And they will doubly do so if you invest in them and the success of them as teammates, collaborators, mentors, and as bosses. So I'm very much looking forward to the Q&A and hearing the questions that our class will ask, and certainly I'm interested in hearing from the broader audience. And again, I just want to thank you guys for the opportunity to talk a little bit about it, and hopefully in this short period of time together, you get a little sense of what sort of drives me as a passion point when I get up every day and come to work. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much to all of our presenters, Mike, Tiffany, and David. Thank you guys very much for your advice, suggestions, and now this leads us to my favorite part of the program, is the Q&A portion. I will say that we're going to get questions from various different students, and hopefully from the wider audience as well. But I don't know what's going to come your way, so you guys are on the hot seat basically. So we'll send any questions that come our way over to you. So a reminder to the audience, if you want to submit a question, the same place that you went to click on the link for YouTube. There's a portion down below the agenda. Just type your question in there and it'll come to me, to my email. So I have it right in front of me. So any questions come through here, I will read them out loud and let us know if you want it directed to any of the presenters tonight as well. All right, so let's kick off the Q&A portion. And to do that, our first question is going to come from Gabino. So Gabino, let's hear what question you might have.
Hello, my question is for David Henson. What is the most important risk you took and why?
I don't know if it was the most important risk. Probably the biggest risk I ever took was in 1996. I decided I wanted to start my first company on my own. And so I went out and booked 3 customers, triple booked my time. I told my boss I was leaving, and my wife left her job at the same time. And then a week later, we both went to the Olympics in Atlanta, naively thinking, yeah, everything's going to work itself out. Now, fortunately for me, it turned into a great 15, 16 years running a software development company. But it was certainly a burn the ships kind of moment for me, where I kind of took the leap of leaving a very comfortable, high-paying job with a company that I liked in order to determine my own destiny. And so there are moments in your life and in your professional career that you have to kind of take a risk where you don't necessarily know if you've got a soft landing. And that was probably, if not the most important, it certainly was a really big moment in my professional career in terms of stepping off the ledge into the unknown and taking a big risk. And it paid off well for me.
Very good. Thanks, David. Next question, Circe.
Hello, my question is for Tiffany Haynes. As a female leader, what has been the most significant barrier in your career, or what obstacle have you had to overcome with being a female leader?
Ooh, a toughie, significant barrier or obstacle. So one of my top challenges several years ago, I would say, when I took the Chief People Officer role, I was the youngest named executive in our organization. And so I had to be extra vetted by, we hired a big outside consulting assessment agency to come in and credential me essentially. And so that was kind of a big deal because nobody else had really had to go through that before. And I think there's 2 ways to look at that, right? You can kind of look at that process and think, well, how come I had to jump hurdles that other people didn't have to jump? But really the way I chose to look at it was to help build my credibility, because we were able to, I was offered the position and, we were kind of able to talk, I was at least able to talk openly about, going through those extra steps that actually helped me build my confidence and helped just reinforce that I was capable to do this job, even though I didn't have all the knowledge and all the skill sets right then, right? I could learn those things, and David kind of talked about that. So that was probably one of the most monumental things that I've had to overcome. I wouldn't call it a barrier, but it was definitely required a different mindset.
Thank you, Tiffany Haynes.
All right, next question, Victoria.
My question is for Mike, and how relevant to your work is your undergraduate major?
Well, that's a great question. My undergraduate major is accounting. And I hope I'm not about to offend anybody when I say this, but I always say that accounting is a great thing to be from, not in. And that quite frankly, is just a reflection of my personality. So if there's any accounting majors out there, you be you and I'll be me. But I think to have a background, a business background, understand how financials work was really critical, because I only really was in an accounting type of job for just a handful of years when I got out of college. And it led to so many other things within Pella. I mean, I was in marketing and engineering and operations and FCO, which I knew nothing about when I came. And so having a background in accounting facilitated all of that. But I knew pretty early on that it was not something that I wanted to do for a career. Now, that is perfectly okay for those who do. But all I'll tell you is be a lifelong learner, learn how to learn. And then, whatever your major is, your career is going to take you down paths that you could never even imagine. And just be bold, be bold and courageous, and be willing to do them, whether or not it lines up with your major. So for me, great thing to be from, not in.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, I'm going to check the queue here to see if any questions have come in. All right, so we got a couple. Mike, we're going to stay with you on this next one. Mike, you mentioned the importance of your faith. How else has your faith impacted the way you lead?
Yeah. First of all, I am by no means perfect or claim to be. I have faith because I need it, and I screw up a lot. So I hope my faith is pervasive in who I am. It's by no means something that I lead with or expect everybody on my team to agree with how I see things or how I see God, or that's not what business is about. But David talked a lot about servant leadership, and I touched on that indirectly too. I want to take care of people. And if you look at what Jesus did, he took care of people all the time. That was his focus. So I hope there's just a little bit of me that taking care of people is a reflection of what I believe and who I am and how my faith has impacted me. Because that's what I think business is really all about. If you serve others and take care of people, and I hope that example, even though I'm not talking about my faith all the time, just shows through.
Very good, thank you. As a reminder, any questions, just type them into the section below the YouTube link. We got another one here. First of all, great job to all the presenters. And a question for each of the panelists here. So maybe we'll start with Tiffany on this, and we'll go through maybe David and then Mike. A question, this day and time, leaders have a significant responsibility in keeping up morale for the team. Do any of the panel members have key tactics they use to boost morale and encourage team members who may be struggling with their own motivation to work? Like I said, we'll start with Tiffany, and then we'll go to David and then Mike.
Yeah, so different tactics and strategies. I can't think of anything specific, but the reason I can't probably is because one of the important elements of leadership is just to have a good, strong one-on-one relationship with the people that you're leading. And so, it doesn't have to be a thing that you do to make somebody feel better. It's just about, talk in real life with them. I have to be careful because I want to jump into business right away, but so I really work at pausing and just kind of checking in. How's the family doing? And how's your workload feeling? And so sometimes just that connection, that empathy, we've talked about servant leadership, how can I support you? How can I help you? Is really good. I run a consolidated call center, which is about 600, hourly workers, running 24/7. So I obviously can't replicate myself that many times, so we have like a central hub that we use, like in Teams, we use Microsoft Teams. And so I try to put out like Wednesday wisdom, and I try to share something inspiring or record a quick video. It's got to be personal. It's got to be authentic. It's got to be real. They got to know that you love them and that you care for them. And as long as you're doing those things, don't try to overthink the strategies for, big morale boosting.
Thanks, Tiffany. David, we'll go to you next.
Yeah, I think by and large, people want to be acknowledged, they want to be heard, and they want to be affirmed, and that goes a long way. And you can do that in a way that is authentic to who you are. And the challenge is, how do you do that at scale? So I think you have to look at ways that your staff and colleagues are challenged in what they do, and how you might bring some levity, respite from the challenge. I know that here we've done a number of things. We will have a surprise day when we have cookies that we'll have just unexpectedly, or I happen to play music. So one of our departments asked me if I would play on the patio one Friday afternoon. And thankfully they didn't run screaming away in terror, but it turned out to be a really nice break. It was unexpected. And it was a recognition that, hey, you guys are working extremely hard in very challenging times, and we appreciate you. So people, they want to be heard, they want to be appreciated, they want to be acknowledged. And I think if you make it a practice, it can be not forced fun or mandatory fun, which never works. But if you authentically thank them in a way that speaks to them and in a way that touches them, a mental health day. We have given our staff one day each semester that they can use as a personal day, because we recognize that COVID has added complexity and hardships to all of us, and we don't leave our troubles at the door simply when we walk across the threshold each morning. So I think you can find ways that will speak to your employees, knowing that they are valued and acknowledged and heard. That goes a long way to building morale.
Yeah, good comments from both Tiffany and David. The only thing I'd build on there is just be real and be authentic and build relationships with people. The most authentic people I've ever met in my life come from my experience on the factory floor at Pella and EFCO. And that's where in my career with the kind of businesses I've grown up in, that is your test of whether you're authentic and whether morale is good, is if you're connecting with the people on the factory floor who are working their rear ends off day in and day out and in tough conditions sometimes. So take time, talk to people. Don't just rush on by, rush into your next meeting, doing your own thing. How you carry yourself in that setting is very, very important. People will see through you if they think you're full of it. So that's what I would say. The other thing, and this is a little bit of struggle, it builds on something Tiffany talked about. By my nature, I'm not a cheerleader. And yet I have to coach myself at times to be that cheerleader, not in a rah-rah sense, but in a be positive, be in a good mood, know that you're being watched. It doesn't mean we can't ever have a bad day, like Tiffany pointed out, because all of us do. But you've got to coach yourself that you are being watched, and you need to be that positive presence. And that's a little self-talk I have to do fairly frequently, quite honestly.
All right, thank you guys. Great responses. All right, we'll pivot over to our students again here for a couple of questions. So, Alejandra.
My question is for David. And my question was, what skills are most important to you when it comes to leadership?
I don't know that there's any one important skill that's most important to leadership. I think there are a number of ingredients that make you a better leader. I think having a trusted mentor is important to your success as a leader, someone that can be a truth teller to you and help you look critically at areas that you need to improve in your leadership. I think being a good listener, having high EQ, emotional intelligence, to understand when there's a problem, being able to pick that up, being able to read the room is a very important skill. But to me, I think one thing that has always helped me is setting clear expectations. And I think that has served me well in every situation. I've heard some people say you have to be clear to be kind. And if you are unclear, you are unkind. And oftentimes we will say things because we feel like people want to hear them. It keeps us from having a hard conversation. It keeps us away from confrontation, when maybe the compassionate thing is to pull the Band-Aid off fast and address a difficult situation, a difficult topic, so that we can move forward to better days ahead. So, being able to be a good project manager, for example, is clearly saying, this is when the deliverable will be made to you. This is what I can do. This is what I cannot do. That's really critical. But, I don't know if there's any one particular thing, but certainly great expectation makes for great feeling at the end of the project.
Good. All right, so Tiffany, a quick one for you. What was the name of the book that you referenced and held up? So if you could show that again or repeat it again.
It's The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so David, you got a next question for us?
So first, I just want to say thank you for your, comments and stories, especially Mike. The story you said about washing your hair, the bathroom sink. That to me that means a lot, because I look up people like you, leaders. Sometimes we forget that we're all human beings. So that helps a lot. So my question is, who do you look up for inspiration or mentorship? And that's for all three. We can start with Tiffany, please.
Oh boy. I have lots of mentors. I have a really wide mentoring network. And I think that's a good thing. I think it's good to tap the shoulder of different mentors given different situations. Inspiration, that's divinely appointed in my world. So, I spend a lot of time reading my Bible and reflecting and journaling and, spending time with my husband, who has great perspective because he's completely unhitched from my job, so he just has this really unique perspective for some of the challenges I go through. So he's really inspiring. So I think there's inspiration all around us. We just have to be willing to pause and look for it.
Go with Mike. Same question.
Yeah, I will say, I'm going to answer a different question to start. It can be a little lonely. It's hard sometimes to find people to talk to in these more traditional, the executive type positions. I talked a lot about leadership being all throughout an organization, but there are times when it's a challenge because you have a difficulty finding somebody in your organization to talk through the challenges. You don't necessarily want them to know all the challenges. And it goes back to that cheerleader. You got to be positive. So I've built sort of a network of other owners of Pella branches since I've owned this one, and figured out that, I need to be able to go to them for mentorship and friendship. I still have my contacts from my old world when I was on the Pella corporate side, and I rely on that. So inspiration, boy, that's a tough one. I look to my family to ground me, honestly, because I'm just dad and I'm a husband, and we just do normal things. And one of my sons had a difficult medical situation right as I was leaving Pella after 20 years and buying this. And it happened within the same month that I was buying the business. And that really helped to ground me, I think. And as I've watched him battle his challenges, that's pretty inspiring to me. So that's what I'd say.
That's a great answer, Mike. And I would answer the same. You know, family is a great grounding factor in my life. Anytime I've ever tried to get too big for my britches, which happens more than I would like to admit, my wife, who we've been together in our married life 34 years, we dated 7 or 8 years prior to that. She's definitely known me longer than any person outside of my immediate nuclear family growing up. And she is really my center, and helps keep me focused on keeping the main thing the main thing. And so we all have those touch points in our life that keep us grounded as people. And Melissa certainly has been, you know, my inspiration. I, in no way, shape, or form would have been the person I am today without her sort of seeing, if you'll excuse the expression, the diamond in the rough. I mean, she definitely had to look past a lot of rough to see the value that was underneath. And so she inspires me in terms of how she runs our family and how she's able to see things in ways that I'm not able to. So we are actually very good complements, and that has served us in good stead. And she definitely makes sure that, you know, if I'm feeling a little above my station, she brings me back to earth very quickly. And we all need that grounding to help us keep that perspective, and keeping the main thing the main thing.
Well, thank you for the answers.
All right, let me go to the message board here. Well, I like this one. All right. Let's see if it's addressed to anybody. So we'll see if anybody wants to answer. Let me go through all three of you guys. So what do you believe to be the best way to handle confrontation differences in leadership when it's necessary to be on the same page? I'll repeat it. What do you believe to be the best way to handle confrontation differences in leadership when it's necessary to be on the same page? We'll go to all three. Does anybody want to take that one first? Or I hate to pick on you, but I'll have to.
Yeah, no, I'll be happy to jump in there. I think first and foremost, you have to agree on the frame of reference about what constitutes success and whatever the confrontation is about. You have to have a goal that you are working toward, an outcome that both would agree is a picture of success. Otherwise, you're arguing about arguing, or worse yet, you avoid the conflict because you don't see a clear, agreeable, mutually beneficial path forward. So I think you have to set the terms of what success looks like, and then you know, put together a plan of engagement to get to that outcome. And you know, sometimes you're successful, sometimes there is not a clear path forward. But unless you have a clear idea of the objectives that you hope to get out of that confrontation, it's really kind of a waste of time and can often do more harm than good.
Any others want to address that one?
I will. Listen. You've got to understand the other person's point of view. This is one thing that I see our politicians across the spectrum failing at. You know, we've become so hyper partisan. We don't even listen to the other side. And I've always taken great pride in, I obviously have views and viewpoints, but I always want to understand why the other side thinks the way they do. I may not ultimately change my mind, but I think it helps find common ground. So that same principle applies in business. You've got to listen and figure out why their viewpoint's different than yours, and figure out whether they're wrong or you're wrong, or there's common ground in the middle.
Good. Tiffany, want to say anything or add anything to that?
All sage advice.
Very good. All right. Next question.
This question is for all the three speakers. How do you continue to grow and develop as a leader? Tiffany, can you start us off?
Yeah. You got to take a lot of risk. So we've talked about that tonight, kind of getting outside your comfort zone. You also have to think about how you're going to prioritize your learning. You especially when you're stepping into new things and you have a lot to learn, you can't learn everything at the same time, right? So think about where you're at and what's the most effective thing that you learn first. Is it learning about the business? Is it learning about the financials? Is it, going through a boot camp? So really step back and think about what's going to be your highest contribution from that learning. And then, take that risk with it and, do your reading. I do tons and tons of reading, more than I really want to, but you have to in order to stay on top of things and at least be able to, speak intelligently or hang with the people who are, way smarter than you are.
David?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And as Michael said earlier, you have to be a lifelong learner. You never really cross the finish line in your professional development. Another hard lesson I've had to learn is that often you have to eat a lot of ego in order to make personal and professional progress. Sometimes your own self-importance and your own point of view can get in the way of really what's best for your company and for the people you lead. And sometimes that's just as simple as being able to say, I'm wrong, I was wrong, and taking the best points of view into account. And as Tiffany just mentioned too, key to that is surrounding yourself with great people. And the more people that you can get around you that are smarter than you, the smarter you look. And so that's really important. But, being a lifelong learner, being able to subsume self in order to see the bigger picture, I think all those are critical toward, continuing to improve as a professional.
Good stuff. The only thing I'd add is keep doing things that make you uncomfortable, because when you get comfortable, you're atrophying. You're not working the muscles and you're not working your brain. So whether that's participating in something in the community or being on a board or speaking at something like this when you get asked, it would have been easy enough to say no, but keep doing things that push you and make you uncomfortable, and you're going to learn much more from the times you're uncomfortable than you ever will when you're comfortable.
Thank you.
Cole, come on up.
My question is for David. How have you managed to keep yourself and your team motivated despite conflicts and obstacles?
The philosophy I had, and I kind of honed it to a fine edge when I worked in New York City, was you got to be able to bruise easy but heal fast. And I think the key is to address conflicts as quickly and judiciously as you can in order for you to get on to the more important things. And the way you keep people motivated is through being an honest broker, being transparent, and being truthful, or as truthful as you possibly can be with all known facts. People will trust you if you have demonstrated time and time again that your motives are on the right things. And so it's about having common purpose. It's about developing trust with your team, and conflict is healthy. You want conflict in order to derive the best solutions. If everybody agreed on everything, not only would it be a very boring place to work and to develop leadership skills, but it would also lead one to believe that you're really not taking every fact into consideration or not exploring every possibility. So while conflict is not always innate to our personalities, it often leads to really great results. And you should really welcome it and learn to exercise it in a way that you can come to constructive results out of critique. When you look at the practice of an architect, being critiqued is part of building those professional muscles, as Michael was talking about. Being challenged in your ideas. When I worked at the yeshiva, that's very much a workplace environment built upon argument and introspection and challenging ideas. And there would be times when I would leave the building screaming at colleagues about issues. 5 minutes later, we're laughing and slapping and telling jokes about things. So it's about how you frame conflict, how you direct your energies toward healthy conflict resolution. And it comes through practice, and it comes through patience. And more importantly, it comes through not taking it personally. It's basically treating those conflicts as professional problems to solve, keep them on a professional footing, and never taking it personally.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to check the message queue here again. Question for Mike. What advice would you give a new employee going into a leadership position for the first time? What advice would you give a new employee going into a leadership position for the first time?
Be humble, be humble, be humble. Assume that you don't know because you probably don't know. There's going to be people on your team that do know. And the only way that you'll figure that out is if you gain their trust and create an environment that they want you and the team to succeed. So that usually starts with not a lot of talking. I always think there's two kinds of leaders, ones who want to go in and blow it up and change everything and implement my way. And there's the other ones who want to listen and build on what the team has been successful on. And by the way, there's a time and a place for both, but I am much more the latter in that. For example, when I came to EFCO, I literally knew nothing about that business. I felt like I was parachuted in and had to learn. And Ben can attest to whether I did this well or not, but I tried very hard to listen and not make a bunch of changes right away without really understanding how things work and the personalities in play. So listen, listen, listen.
Good. Question?
All right, my question is going to go to all three of you, and it's a two-parter type of question. Have any of you guys had a bad leader or mentor, and did you learn anything from that leader or mentor?
I guess I'll start. Have I had a bad leader? Yeah, I've had a couple of those. I think we probably all have, because I saw our facial expressions when you asked that question. But here's what I learned in hindsight. In the moment, it sucks. But in hindsight, I'm able to look back at those situations and say, okay, so leadership maybe wasn't their strength. But I could pick out elements of ways they did lead, maybe not consistently, but special things they did to help me as a leader. And so I think when you're in those situations, that's a really good thing to kind of ground you. Like, you may not agree with everything they're doing and how they're approaching it, and leadership, they just might be in the wrong seat on the bus. But if you can just kind of pause and pick out a couple of things that you really do appreciate about them, and share that with them and encourage them in that, it will help you get through that season.
Yeah, I'll go. Yes, I've had bad leaders. I think you can learn just as much from bad leaders as good ones, because you can learn what not to do. As you're building your style and the way you want to lead, it's just like parenting. We all have parents. You know what your parents did well, and some things where you said, I am never going to do that with my kids. And I think a difficult leader is the same thing. It's hard in the season that you're in when you're going through it, but you will learn a lot about what not to do. Hey, I'm not going to do what he did or what she did. So I would encourage you in those seasons where you don't have a very good leader over you, just learn from that too.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add to that. I did have a boss about 30 years ago. There were a couple of years where I just really, I didn't progress very much professionally and had a lot of self-doubt. I really questioned a lot of my abilities there. I was working for a person who, I didn't particularly respect in terms of knowledge or skill, until I realized that maybe 90% of what this person espoused, I didn't respect or considered nonsense. But there was about 10% that was actually brilliant. And I came to realize that it wasn't so much his problem as it was my problem, and understanding how to work effectively with him. And it gets back to what I said at the top of my talk. Once I became invested in making my boss successful and understanding what he was trying to say to me, things began happening for me. Not by way of being a suck up, but because I understood how I needed to progress by being a better listener, and to separating the wheat from the chaff from what I considered was a bad boss. But it really wasn't that he was a bad boss. I really wasn't a very good employee. And many times good leaders are terrible employees. So that was actually a moment of self-realization for me that, maybe this wasn't the most productive place for me to be, not because Larry was a bad boss, but because I was in the wrong place, and I needed to be a better listener.
All right, I know we're coming up at the bottom of the hour. We have 3 more students that we'd like to ask questions. So I'm going to ask for you guys to select one leader to ask that question to. So hang with me here, guys. We got 3 more students to ask questions. But next up, come on.
Hello, my question is for Mike. Have you ever been a leader to someone?
Can you say that again?
Have you ever been a leader? I mean, a mentor to someone?
Oh, been a mentor?
Yes.
Yeah. Pella had a very well-developed mentorship program, and where I would have a mentor, but I would also be a mentor in a very formal program. So on a formal basis, yes, I've had the opportunity to go both ways, and that's really important, to be able to mentor and be mentored. And then informally, now that I'm kind of out of the corporate world, I still have those relationships that some of them now are 20 years old with those mentors. So you really grow pretty deep friendships with those folks. And now, some of the folks that I used to mentor, I go to them for mentoring because, they're very accomplished in their own right. So I would encourage you, if you can be involved in formal mentorship programs, both directions, always take that opportunity.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, Ricardo, you're up next.
This question's for David. What advice would you have for yourself if you could go back 20 years in your career?
I would say take more risks. And that's coming from somebody who is not at all risk averse. I've taken a number of leaps in my life that were probably very ill-advised, but you never realize the gains from those chances you never take. And I can look back on my life and realize that if there was a way that I could pre-install or pre-instill regret for opportunities not taken, I would do it. I think there needs to be a realization in your life that there will be some opportunities that present themselves over and over and over again. And then there are some opportunities that really are once in a lifetime opportunities. And I would say to my younger self, be more willing to jump out and take advantage of opportunities as they're presented and not waiting for the next bus to come down the road.
Thank you.
All right, Joanna.
So this question is for Tiffany. What was the first step you took to be where you're standing right now? What was the risk that you took?
The risk I took?
Yeah.
For this current role?
Yeah.
I kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but I was by far the youngest in this role. We're getting a new CEO, and I remember the day I walked into his office with my org chart plan of how I wanted to transform the people and culture team, and my heart was pounding. I think it was like in my throat maybe. And, I told him I wanted to be the chief people officer, and he looked at me and he said, I don't think you're ready for this. And in that moment, I don't know what came over me, but I just said, well, what if I come up with a plan where I can't fail? And he's like, okay, bring me the plan. And so I did, and I guess the rest is history. So, but that was pretty risky and pretty scary. I kind of wanted to throw up afterwards.
Thank you.
All right, thank you guys very, very much. So I will give each of you another opportunity to provide some advice, last advice to the students. So we'll kind of go through the order of the individuals who presented. So we'll start with Mike, and then Tiffany, and then David. But any final advice you would offer the students this evening? Now, we've talked on a lot of different topics. You probably had different things pop in your mind as well. But any last advice here for the students? Start with Mike.
Take care of your family and your personal relationships first before you worry about work, because you have to be well-grounded at home, and things have to be going well outside of home to be successful in business or in a very responsible job. So concentrate on what's important, which is faith, whatever that means to you, and family, and then success at work will follow those if you're taking good care of those outside of work.
Yeah, that one's hard to follow. I think he hit it on the head. You got to have a mission. And, for us and my family and 4 boys, we have a mission, and it's not mama's job. Our mission is a ministry that my husband has at a school for those with low income. And that's what all of our energy goes to, and our time goes to. And when you have those things properly aligned, all the other stuff works itself out. So, seek the right things first, and the rest will follow.
Good.
Absolutely cannot argue with any of that. I would say put in the work. It's amazing how many good things and how lucky you become when you put in the work, because when those opportunities do cross your path, you will be prepared to take advantage of them. And it's by working those muscles that Mike talked about that if you let them atrophy through inactivity or lack of practice, you won't be able to be agile enough to capitalize on those once in a lifetime chances. So put in the work. It will stand you in good stead. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but definitely those experiences you bank are with you always, and they will always be yours.
Very good. Great advice from all three of you. And I wish you could see the message board that I'm seeing. So we are getting people to writing comments. They don't have questions, but it's just comments. And all of it is just fantastic about the advice that you guys have provided. So thank you very much, and wish you could see this as well. So we are coming to a close of our Leadership Summit. We did ask the question at the beginning as far as who is watching from the furthest location. So a very loyal individual, Jack Prim, who has 9 years of Leadership Summit, I guess attended Leadership Summits for 9 years. So that was the highest, and he's also the furthest away in Raleigh, North Carolina. So Jack, you're going to get a door prize. We do have, what is that, the beer place? If you lived here, there was a beer vendor. If you lived here, we would give you that one, but we'll get you some jury swag and send that out to you. So if I could maybe pick a couple of names real quick. So we got a lot of swag here, a lot of giveaways, but I'll just pick a couple of names, and then we'll pick more after offline and send you guys some content, but to be respectful of time. And Rhonda has picked a couple of names. First name, Socorro Morales is going to be a winner, so we'll get you some good stuff here for you. Like I said, there's Walmart, there's McDonald's, there's Starbucks, all kinds of good stuff here. So you drew Jack Prim's name again.
I did.
So Jack won twice, but we're putting him back. So Jack, it's your lucky night tonight.
A little extra something.
Yeah.
Buy a lottery ticket.
Yeah. All right. So the next winner is Alicia Sanchez. So Alicia Sanchez and Socorro Morales will get some stuff to you. You guys are guaranteed winners. And like I said, offline, when we finish here, we'll draw the rest of the names for some really good items and merchandise that we have. In all sincerity, guys, we really, really appreciate your participation, for the leaders, for your time. It was mentioned you guys could have said no. We appreciate you not saying no. We appreciate you participating. It means a lot to us. I know it means a lot to our students. As mentioned, we've been doing this for 9 years now, and it just continues to evolve and continue to get better. Very bummed that we're not able to do this in person, but this format really worked and really pulled it off with the help of a lot of individuals behind the scenes to help this out. So on behalf of the leadership class, on behalf of those who are watching online, thank you very, very much for your time. Great job. Appreciate it. And we will definitely be in touch. So thank you, everybody. That concludes.